Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Thank you all for joining. My name is Firas, and I'm the event planner for the Microsoft Reactor in Redmond. Before we start, I have a few things to go over with. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary to remain professional and on topic. This session is recorded. It will be available through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link to the YouTube channel in the chat. I'll also be sharing some links for the Reactor Mira page and a survey for the event. Which brings us to our session today. This session will run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. Our speaker for today is Sam. He's a regional cloud advocate. Right now, I'm going to pass this along to Sam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. Today, we are going to be taking a look at how you can add online services to games, whether that's video games or VR experiences or things like that. We're going to be using a service called Playfab, which is a free-to-use or get started with tool that uses Azure to kind of build awesome, cool, connected experiences in your games. So that's going to cover a whole bunch of different things. Today, we're going to be taking a look at logins. But this entire month, I am learning Playfab and taking you along on the journey, kind of reviewing what I've learned and stepping through all the fun things to add on to Flappy Cube, our fun little game that we built a while ago. So first, before I got started, I kind of wanted to call out Unicorn Battle. If you're interested in learning more about Playfab and you want something that's a little bit more in-depth, that goes into a lot more detail about how all of this works, there's a full app that is developed by Playfab that covers a lot more than we're going to have time to get into. I'm focusing a lot more on introductory stuff so you can kind of get started, get your feet wet and kind of figure this stuff out. This is a full app. This is a full game that you can actually go and download from the Play Store or on iOS and actually go and play and explore the code. It's all on GitHub, so you can just go and explore it. But it's a lot more than I have time to cover. There's a lot of topics here, from inventory management to online saves to in-app purchases, things like that. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to learn more about that, this is a great place to get started. But we're going to be kind of taking a step back and introducing it into our own little miniature game, so we can kind of get started with this and figure out what all of this stuff actually does. But yeah, it's super cool. So we're going to be taking a look at Flappy Cube. So we built this a while ago. This is a brand new like menu screen that I built for this. And today we're going to be looking at identity. So does Playfab work with HoloLens and Windows mixed reality apps? It should. I have not used it for Windows mixed reality or anything like that. But if you want to do that, I don't see why not. I'm just using Unity. So this is just a Unity thing, and it's all just web requests. It's all just JSON web requests. So it should just work. But I haven't tried it. So go play for it yourself. You'll see it's actually not that hard to actually get started. Logins, for example, are 2 lines of code. So it should be pretty quick. We should be able to kind of cover this and hopefully give us some time to experiment. So here is our app. I've taken the game part out. That's on a separate scene. Today, we're looking at identity. We're going to be creating a login for our user and doing some basic stuff there. We're going to kind of cover what that implies and a few of the different paths you can take to do identity. Because it turns out there's a lot of different options. If you greet somebody with a login registration page when they download your app, I'm not sure how many people are going to stick around to do that. So you want some sort of conversion or something like that. Playfab gives you a number of different ways to identify a user in the system. The first one we're going to be taking a look at is using a unique device ID. This can be something that you define. You can just give some random GUID or ID or whatever you want to generate to do that, or even use the device ID from an Android or iOS phone to uniquely identify the thing. The problem with something like that is it's tied to that device. So there's no way to get it back. If somebody changes devices, for example, all the stuff that was tied to that previous device ID is gone. There's no recovery path or anything like that. So we're going to kind of take a look at that, and then we're going to step into Playfab Auth, which gives you a username and password, which you might be a little bit more familiar with, so you can actually identify people that way. And then I don't think we'll have time to do this, but Playfab also supports things like Oauth, which means that you can identify people using Facebook or Google or any of the other different IDs. If you're on Twitch, for example, you can identify people with Twitch and sign in that way. Or if you're publishing through Steam or Xbox or something like that, you can use one of those specific authorization paths to actually authorize your users and identify people through that pre-existing method. So we probably don't have time for that. That's a little bit more involved, but we're going to take a look at all of this basic stuff. So let's do that. What I've done so far is we have a login manager. This code does three things right now. It updates a username, a email, and a password. So if I type a username, we're just going to use mine. And we'll do some email. This doesn't need to be anything, so I'm going to just use one of mine again, and then we're going to go and give us a password. So what this does, give us a username, email, and password. We can just go and access that through the login menu controller that I've created, which is just a mono behavior with three methods. You can see it's updated those three. So we actually have our stuff. This is the code. Nothing fancy going on here, just Unity UI stuff. If you're unfamiliar with Unity UI, there's plenty of really good introductory examples for that. We're probably not going to get into it too much here. We will have to hook up our buttons, so there will be a little bit of coverage there, but not too much. So what we want to do is just sign the person in. We're going to sign in using a unique device ID. What that ends up looking like, we go and look at our players. Here is my app. I should step back a little bit because I've cheated slightly here. I've already done some of this work. I have added the Playfab SDK. So it's already configured here. I've also signed in and authenticated everything. If you don't know what any of that means, there's a quick start that I think was dropped into the chat. And so you can actually go and grab that and work from there. So the Unity 3D quick start is going to give you the extension that you need in order to get this. So this is the Playfab Settings. You're going to get some sort of SDK setup, and it's just another asset you would import into Unity. This allows you to actually connect to Playfab and set up what is actually going on here. You have two sort of unique things that kind of go on here. You have a studio, which defines your studio of game development stuff. And then you have titles, which are the games in that studio that define different things. So we have a studio called World of Zero, just because that's what I use. And then we have a specific, where was it? Settings, studios, World of Zero. And then we have a title called Flappy Cube. I'm not going to expand this because this gives you a unique ID for that specific title that you can use. But from here, we can actually pull in a title ID. This title ID ends up getting automatically inserted for you into this little developer secret key. I'll probably re-roll that because now that you know it, this should all be auto-populated for you. So these are just drop-down lists that you can go and grab from Playfab. So I created these from the Playfab UI. If you're unfamiliar, that's here. And then we just go into our studio and create a new project. So just click new title here. And that will allow you to create a title for your game. And you can go from there, and that will store everything for your game. That has a whole bunch of things. We're going to be looking at identity, which means players. But the other things that we're going to be taking a look at later are going to be things like leaderboards. There's also more useful developer tools that you can get access to. Things like analytics data or player experience data that's going to tell you how many people played the game this week or how many people got stuck on level 3. or how many people died to the Goomba at the start of Super Mario World. Things like that. Like you can get all sorts of really fun analytics metadata about what the experience is and figure out how to actually tweak the experience based off of that. We'll be looking at that in the coming weeks, but that's something fun to add. So this is our players. I've already created a few because I've been testing this to figure out how it works. So if we click search here, we're going to find the 2 players. I've created 2 different ones using 2 different creation methods. The first one is what we're going to just be creating. This is automatically created from a device ID. So you can see there's no username set up for this. There's no email attached to it. It's all blank. But there is a custom getting started guide link. This would be coming from your device ID if you wanted to do that, or it's just a string, getting started guide. That's the basic player. That gives you something that is tied to a unique ID. In this case, it's just tied to that. The problem with this is anybody with that ID can identify as this user. So I don't know if that's something you want in your experience, but there's a conversion path that I think you probably want to introduce when you're building something like this that involves creating these temporary users, so a getting started guide, and then attaching that onto a existing account. And you can do that by linking them. And so that will allow you to actually tie this quickly created account that's automatically created for players based off their device ID or something like that, and tie it to a new ID that they've created, whether that's for a Facebook login or a Google login or an Xbox login, and then tied to something that they've already started to work on. So let's step back a little bit more and actually do this. So let's create a new user. So to do that, we have our Flappy Cube. There we go. Let's create a new function to do this. Playfab just uses web requests. So I'm going to just public void create temporary user. Sure. We'll call that. Names are hard. I'm not very good with them, but that's what we're going to use. And so there's 2 real things that have to happen here. We need to create a request that is actually going to be the contents of what we're going to send, and we need to send that request. And so the difference is the request object is going to store all the information that you're sending. It's going to say who you're creating an account for, what kind of request it is, things like that. The actual request or action is going to have things to respond to that. So you might get a response that is success, which means you created your account or you successfully logged in. Or you might get an error saying this password is invalid or this user doesn't exist or something to that nature. So we're going to kind of start here and work from this point. So let's just create our request. So I have some notes just to make sure that I know what I'm doing. So we're going to create a new login. There's a whole bunch of examples here that we can kind of look through. You've got Nintendo, Steam, Twitch, Xbox, etc. So we can log in with our custom ID, which is just going to give us a custom ID that we can create to uniquely identify the user. And so we're just going to create this object, and I'm going to say create account. What this is going to do is say automatically create this account if it doesn't exist for us already. So otherwise you might get an error that the user doesn't exist. But we're going to do reactor demo as our that's not how you do that. True. Much better. That's a Boolean value. So we need to give this a unique ID, which I got a little bit ahead of myself. We're going to give this our custom ID. So our custom ID uniquely identifies this thing. I say uniquely, it's not unique. Anything with this custom ID is going to be assigned to this user. So typically here you would provide a iOS or Android device ID, or you pull something from Windows or whatever operating system you're on to uniquely identify what you're creating. Here it's a demo. So we're creating just a basic user with a hard-coded string and just going from that. So we're going to do custom ID reactor demo. Actually, no, let's skip that for now. Going off script. In this, we're now going to create the request. We've done that. let's send it. So we need to do a Playfab API client. Playfab client API. That's the spelling. This is why we have notes. So what this is going to do is actually be the thing that sends these requests. So this request is just it's just an object. It's just data. Now we need to actually send this. This is actually going to be translating this into a JSON web request and sending it out to Playfab so it can do something with it. So we're going to do Playfab login with custom ID. And so this is going to allow us to provide that request and provide two actions. These actions are how we're going to respond to the results of this request. So we're going to send this thing out and we're going to get some results back. That can either be a login result, meaning we successfully logged in and here's some information back, or it can be an error, meaning we couldn't create this account or there was a connection issue or any other error occurred. So we'll get to that in just a little bit, but for now, let's just create these. So on create anonymous user. So we're creating anonymous accounts. This isn't tied to any personal information. This is just some unique ID that we've created. So we're creating an anonymous user here, or on create anonymous user error. Let's call this success. And so we've defined those. These are just actions. So any of the normal C# action stuff should work. So I'm just going to generate some methods here. You don't need to necessarily generate methods here. Again, it's just actions. So if you want to do something like this and just ignore all your errors, you can. Don't. But that's the thing. So if that's something that you want and you want to like handle these in line, they're just actions. So anything that would work normally with an action will work here. So that's that. That's going to create the thing, and then we're going to get either a user error or a user success to actually tell us what happened. So let's do debug log and just say user created. That's success. And then if there's an error, let's actually log this. So debug log error. And we're just going to do, I'm going to change this. Whoa. Okay. That was weird. Generate error report. So this is actually a helper function to actually help create these error reports that's actually showing what ended up going on here. So the default names is obj. We're going to use something a little bit better. Login results. There we go. And so the error report is going to give us an error. We shouldn't get any errors here, I don't think. I'm not entirely sure. This isn't a path that I have done that much testing with. I've worked more with the email and password authentication. So that's where we're going. So let's do this. We have a create temporary user. We need to invoke that now. So let's go in and do that. Let's actually go and call this and create a new user for us to actually reference and use. So I have this play now button in the hierarchy. So let's grab that and attach an on-click event. So if you're unfamiliar with Unity UI, this is how you actually pipe events between all the components. So what we're doing here is selecting an object that we want the event to target. So when this button is clicked, we're going to go to the canvas object, find the login menu controller, and invoke the create temporary user function. So there we go. So let's actually send this, and hopefully once we click play, this will start playing. And if I click play now, we should hopefully get a user created message, which means I should now have 3 users in Playfab. So if I go up here to our players and actually go and look at them, we have 2, there we go, 3. So this one was just created now. So there we go. We have these. These are unique display names. So we have the player ID here. That's the display name that people are going to see. It's randomly generated for us. So that's just a thing, but we have our Reactor demo custom user. So this is actually a way for us to actually create this thing from this unique string. This probably isn't something that you're going to use in the way I've done it. that often. This is kind of a good getting started. If you just want like 2 lines to create something, all you need is a string and a Playfab account. And there you go. You just go to playfab.com and sign up, and then you're good. And you can just start creating this. So that's like the intro. That's how we're going to get started. Now we're going to actually look at how we can add a username and password and make these fields that are added to this fun UI actually do something. So we're going to make something that accepts a username, email, and password. We're actually going to assign that to our player. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to go a little bit off of what I had planned because I think it'll be a little bit more fun, and we'll see what happens. So we have username, email, and password. Those are already hooked up, so I already have them synced. They should already be there. So we just need to actually create the thing. So there we go. Let's do that. Let's go and create our new user. Public create from create user with email. Sure. That's a good name. I'm bad at naming. We're just gonna leave it as it is and work around it. So there we go. Create user with email. We're going to go and create our new user. So var request. We're going to create another request. If you're unfamiliar with where these are coming from, it's just here. Well, that's not helpful. It's coming from the client model. So playfab.client models is where all of these things are defined. So you can actually go and look through them. Or how I've been finding them is if you go here and actually look at some of the API documentation, which is at api.playfab.com, you can actually go and run through all of this information and actually get the request. So here's just the URL that you do to log in with the custom ID. This is what we just did. So we just posted to this API. It's already handled by the wrappers there. But this is what's actually happening. We're sending a request out to it and doing all this. You'll notice login with custom ID is the same thing as is defined here. So login with custom ID request, and the function is just called login with custom ID. So if you're browsing the APIs and you find something, that's a good indicator of how to actually go and find things or name things in code. So something useful to actually look at. So going back to this, because we're taking lots of detours apparently, let's actually create our user. So I'm going to do a new register Playfab user request. There we go. So Playfab user request, this takes a few different things. So we're going to do email equals the email, username equals our username, and password equals our password. And those are just coming from the strings we bound up top. So that's coming right from our UI. And so that is our request. That's what we need to actually create this account. Now let's actually create it. So another client request. So client API. And we want to register our Playfab user. You'll also notice that this template matches. So you have a request and results for the different API calls. So register Playfab user takes in a Playfab or register Playfab user request, and it will output the Playfab user result. So you will get things in that naming scheme. It's probably easier to see down here. We have our login with custom ID request, and we have our login result down there. So let's send this off. So request, and we need our result. So this is going to be our sign in. Let's see, register Playfab user. This is actually registering a user. So on new user registration, and then on new user registration error. There we go. And these don't exist, so let's just create them. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm doing here, there's a shortcut here, control period to do that, and then you can just click what you want or hit enter to do the first one. So that's going to generate these methods for us, just so we kind of have things created for us. So we're actually getting some results. So new user registration error. This is actually, I'm just going to pipe this directly into the on anonymous user error There's some advantages to doing some abstraction here to actually make this a little bit nicer to actually handle these errors. It's a demo. I'm not going to spend too much time like making the code super nice, but we want something to handle our errors. So I'm sending it somewhere to handle our errors without having to re-implement it. Anyway, so new user registration. We registered a new user. So what did we do? Debug .log new user registered. That registers our user, which means we should actually be able to get our new user. So once all of this updates, we should be able to run this. Let's go and do a play. Yeah, there you go. Cool. So we're playing our game. Now we actually have everything hooked up. So I can actually just enter some things here. Let's just do test. And let's do our password, which will just be test again. And let's click register. And I never hooked this up, so that's not going to do anything. Let's do that. So let's attach our event to actually make all of that work, because I'm getting too far ahead of myself. There we go. Canvas. We're going to call our new function that we just called, which is going to be create user with email. And now we can do this and actually get this all to work. So there we go. Test. Keep trying to tab, and I didn't actually configure that, so that doesn't work. There we go. And our new password. So let's just register this user, and we get a invalid input parameters error. This is because our password is too short. Passwords must be between 6 and 100 characters. We get that in our little error result here. So that doesn't work. We get an error, but we can just go and change it to testing, and that's more than 6 characters. So if we register this, now we have a new user. So now we have 4 users, hopefully, if I've done things correctly. Nope. What did I do? Oh no. There it is. Okay, cool. So there's our new user. And now we can actually see some of the stuff here. We have the test, we have the email hidden, so you can't see that right away. But we have our new user with test as their username. The problem is their display name is still 78763FF. That's not actually that useful for anything. But also we're getting a whole bunch of things. You can see when the person last logged in, when they first created their account, all sorts of fun information here. We can also change some of this. So if we want to set up an avatar or change the display name here, we can do that. So let's go and change a bit of this though. We created this user, we registered the user, but we didn't sign the user in. So we need to actually validate the password and do the login bit. So let's do that. So new thing, we're just gonna add more functions because we can. Really cool thing about this, all of these functions are like 2 lines. So there's not too much going on here. You just need the data to send. And then something to handle it. Obviously, we're doing something really simple to just handle these and kind of throw the results away. But you can actually take this information and work with it. So we have a registered user, so we can actually just work with that. We have all the fun stuff that came with it. We have the ID, settings for the user, the username, things like that you might actually want to use to actually work with the player. But we are kind of skipping that. So let's log in. Login user. We're actually going to be using a lot of the same stuff here, so let's just reuse this. Login with email address request. This doesn't require a username. If you want to sign in with a username and password instead of an email and password, you can do Playfab, login with Playfab request, which would look like new login with Playfab request. So this is going to do a username and the password. And that's how that would look. So you can kind of choose whichever experience you're trying to build here. I'm using email because that way we can actually send backup email requests. And I'm going to make it so you can actually change your display name away from your username. So the username doesn't change, but the display name will. So people will see a different name for this instead of the random string of characters that we created previously, because that seems less useful. The way to do that is to assign a display name when you register the user. So we can do username like this, and that will give us a display name. Problem is we already created this user. It already exists. So we need some way to actually go and update that. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. That's the off script part I was talking about. So we'll do that. Actually, let's leave that there, because if you're creating the thing, let's set the display name just so everything's consistent. Makes a little bit more sense. There we go. So log in with email address. We don't need this. There we go. So we have our password. Everything's good. Now we just need to actually, instead of registering a new user, we're actually going to go and create this user. And I already forget what I called the person, but that's okay. So log in with email address, a request on user who login. And this is a new error. So on user error, there we go. Again, names are hard. It's just the way of the thing. So we have our login and our error handling. I'm going to again pipe this off to the other error stuff because that just makes sense. On new user registration error object. I'll call this an error. And while I'm doing all of this, let's handle our errors a little bit nicer. I mentioned I wasn't going to do this, but it's annoying at this point. So one of the refactoring things that I like to think about, if you do something like 3 times, it might be worth looking at it because it means you're using it more than twice. You're not just using it once, and you're not just like needing it again for one other thing. It's something that you're constantly coming back to. And so that makes it a little bit of a better candidate for refactoring. So let's do that. Handle error. Playfab error. That's the error. And let's just copy this out. And now we're just going to pass all of our errors to this handle error. I'm going to keep them as separate functions. This allows me to actually respond to those in slightly different ways in the UI. But we can actually log things out a little bit nicer. That's not how we want to do that. Handle error. And we'll pass off our error. There we go. And cool. All right, so that's taken care of. That's out of the way. Now let's actually do our user login. So we've successfully logged in. Let's say that debug.log. We should get some information here. So let's actually look at that and just say, what do we want to use? I haven't actually thought this part out. So we're going to use a guess. Let's just log object dot playfab ID. Let's log that out and just see what it is, because I guess. And we'll just say logged in. There we go. Something that we know we logged in as our user. It should also give us a unique response this way. So we'll actually get something a little bit useful to actually look at. So that is our login. We have a way to log in with our email and password. So let's take a look at that. Good time to take notes of what I actually set the values as. And I think we just lost all of our stuff because I was still playing. So let's reset that. Set up our button so we have our login now. Let's actually remember to do this so I don't forget. Set up this to actually invoke our function. So we have our canvas that's going to go into our login controller and create that or hit that new entry point that we created, the login user function. So now all of our buttons should be set up if I haven't screwed something up, which is definitely a possibility. So what we're going to do now is actually log our user in. So first thing, let's just re-enter some of this. So test and create our password, which is testing. I'm not masking those because, yeah. Let's try to register this, and we can't. We can't register our user because the address is not available. We already have an account for this. So you can't register another account. You already have the email and stuff specified. So let's click login. And there we go. We logged in our new user of 7863FF, whatever that fun name is. And that's actually coming from here. 7876, I believe. Yeah, so that is our player ID. Here we go. So there you go. That is our entire login experience. Again, we're keeping things relatively, I don't want to say simple, but we're keeping things relatively basic so we don't have to go too far into how all of this is working and go into building a full game, because full games are complicated. There's a whole lot that goes into building something like this. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about Playfab. It makes it really easy to do this stuff. All of this stuff is only a few lines of code, and most of it's just passing data around. We're not like implementing some complex logic to do a lot of this. It kind of eliminates a lot of that for you. Means you don't have to handle your servers either, which is useful. So there we go. That is our user login. We can actually sign in a user, do all of that. Problem is, we do not have a way to change our display name. So I logged in the user, but the display name is wrong. It's not what we wanted. So we're going to go back and actually create a way to update that display name, to actually go and change that. So let's do that. Let's go here. And what is the best way to do this? I don't actually know, because again, I didn't really plan this part in. But it seems like it'd be a useful thing to do, right? You want to rename your username without having to recreate a new account or anything like that. You want to just change how people see your name. So let's add that. So the way I find these is I do add or update, because I kind of know what this is. We want to add or update our contact email. That's not it. Display name. Request. There we go. All right. Update user title, display name, request. Cool. Found it. So that is the new request we need to create. So this is our request. There we go. And let's create this update. That's a new. There we go. So we're going to create a new request to update our display name. And we need an authentication context and the display name. So we should have that object.authentication context that gives us the authorization as this user to go and do something for this, to actually authenticate as the user that we've logged in as and perform an action on their behalf. So now we're going to update the display name and set that equal to username. So this UI makes no sense. I wouldn't enjoy interacting with this, I don't think. But we have a email and password field that log you in, and we have a username field that updates your name to whatever that is. I guess that makes sense, but it really doesn't. So we're just going to do this because that's what I set up, and we'll see. But this is how you kind of use this logged in user to actually perform an action, to actually do something with that user. So let's send that request. So Playfab client API. And we want to, I don't actually know the name of this, so I'm just going to copy the name of the request. So user title, there we go, right there. So we've created a new user and the same format is here. So we have our request and we have our response and the error. So update username, response, or let's do on. There we go. Makes a little bit more sense. We're still following that action thing. On update username error. All right. So we've created two new functions to actually update our username and update the username error that might occur. Again, we're just going to pass the error off to our error handling. So handle error. And let's look at our username now. We should have updated our username. So debug log username updated. And we'll take a look at the Playfab UI to actually see what that changed. So view this now, I forgot a semicolon. Classic. All right, cool. So update our user title display name. That should now work. I think there was still another error in Visual Studio, so I might have missed something, but I think we're good. Cool. All right, so that's all reloaded. Let's actually sign our user in and change their name. So we have our username. Again, right now it's a whole mess of characters. The actual player ID is something else. So let's change that to something useful. So if we go here, call it reactor, I guess. Test. I don't know why my scene does weird things, but that's okay. And we're gonna add our password here and log in. So if we do login, hopefully, user not found. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Nice. All right, cool. Let's try that again. There we go. We logged in, and we got another response after that. It says username updated. So I think it worked. So let's see what happened. Let's see what changed. If we look here now, hopefully, username, our display name, I've forgotten where it is. There it is, reactor. Cool. So we're now the reactor instead of some random string of characters or just a blank field that wasn't very useful. So there we go. Gives us a little bit of something to actually uniquely identify ourselves and give us a little bit more personality and customization. So that is that. That's the login experience. Are there any questions? I have gone very fast through all of this. And I'm very aware that I have gone super fast. So if there's any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I can tell you what we're looking at next, which is also super cool. Because this has kind of been like the first intro to cloud services in your games to kind of get used to all of this stuff and hopefully introduce Playfab and then some of the cool things you can do with it. Again, if you want to just get started, just go to playfab.com. That will get you started. It's free to get started, so you can just kind of grab it and work with it. It's pretty fun, and there's a whole bunch of things that I haven't even started to talk about. If you want to work with multiplayer, it's got support for that. If you want to do identity, we just did that. If you want to talk about friends and matchmaking and all this other fun stuff, also there. So it's super cool. So that's all of that. Again, I want to plug the Unicorn Battle. This goes into way more details about how all of this stuff works. So here is their authentication, which goes into a lot more detail about how to handle this, how to look at some errors, how to do some of the callbacks and things like that, to actually integrate this into a more complex thing. It supports a whole bunch of other features that I just haven't had the chance to either look at or we don't have the time to look and implement. But this is actually an app that you can download on your phone, and it's open source. So you can go and play with it and see how it all works. So there's all that. Other than that, we're going to be taking a few more looks at how to do some cooler things. We've authenticated our user, but let's add high scores, for example. So the game that we created is Flappy Cube, which I just have a really basic bouncing cube, but we can actually integrate this and add high scores for our players. So we can actually track who has the highest score for this amount of time. Who scored the highest overall, who scored the highest in a specific amount of time, things like that. So you can actually track that information. That's coming up next. And then we're going to take a look at how you can use it to do telemetry. So we talk about how you can grab information to track public high scores for players. But how about some of the examples that I brought up previously, where you want to take a look at, say, difficulty spikes or walls that players might be hitting. Maybe they get stuck on a specific level. Maybe they hit that first Goomba. Those kind of things can be really useful in designing a game and figure out, why are people leaving? Like, why is everybody getting to level 4 and then never running the app again? That's a useful thing to know. It tells you why or how people are engaging with what you're building. and it helps you hopefully build cooler stories. So that is that. And then we're going to look at friends and figure out how to, after all these accounts we've created over the past day and over the upcoming sessions, we've created a bunch of these things. How do we connect people? So how do you see who in your friends group had the highest score for the week? Something like that. So those are sort of what we're going to be taking a look at as we expand this, and you can kind of take a further look. I haven't seen any questions, but that is sort of everything that I had here to talk about, and just kind of walk through identity and getting you started kind of adding online services into some of your fun games projects. So you can actually start integrating cloud stuff because it makes it really cool. One of the other really cool things that I really like about Playfab is online settings, for example, configuration. Let's say you introduce a weapon or some sort of item into your game and you want to change how it interacts with the game. You want to change some setting. Maybe it buffs your speed or something like that. You can actually update that online to actually change how it's interacting with the player. What that means is that you don't need to push out a full new update. You don't need to beta test or test your entire game again because you changed one number in your fields. You can actually push the entire thing and have it updated automatically for people so they can actually see these new stats come in and work with them. So it's super cool. But that is everything I have. Sorry, my voice is going out. But anyway, that is it. So thank you everybody for watching. And I will see you next week when we go into more detail on all of this stuff.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for putting together such a great session. We appreciate it. It went really well. So for everyone else, I shared a link for the reactor survey. Please, we would appreciate your feedback to know how this session went. Just go to the AKA link and use the event ID 15011. Other than that, we still have a bit of time. If anyone has any questions for Sam, he'll still be here. If not, we'll wrap this session up.
Again, thanks everybody for watching, and hope you get a chance to play with this. It's super fun. So thanks again.
That's great. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and we'll wrap this session up now.